Hi, everyone. My name is Marcie Klevens, and I'm a lifelong experiencer and a mental health counselor who specializes in trauma reprocessing and working with people who have suffered anomalous trauma due to paranormal activity. Today, I would like to talk about a lot of different ways that we can support and help people who have experienced ontological shock after encounters with the paranormal. The term ontological shock means to change your thoughts and your views of everything you believe in. This is the core of the trauma that experiencers of the paranormal have to deal with. And this is what causes people to suffer with dissociation, isolation, and can cause complex post-traumatic stress disorder and something called post-abduction syndrome, PAS, which I will be talking about throughout this presentation. As a member of the EST and others who wish to support this very underserved population of people, we are often left wondering what the best ways are to be of assistance. In my talk today, I will go over many of the issues that experiencers are struggling with and give you different ideas on ways to address the following. How to help them to deal with a panic attack that can be triggered by talking about their experiences. Ideas on how to help them to ground and become more conscious in the face of dissociation caused by a trauma response. Educate them about different modalities to reprocess fear and trauma from their past encounters, like EMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and hypnotherapy. I'll also be talking about ways to address the isolation they feel and how to talk to others about their experiences. Ideas on how parents can help their children to deal with these encounters, and how to help women and men who are struggling with despair at the loss of a pregnancy. I'm going to talk about the symptoms of post-abduction syndrome, PAS, and how to know if it's time to seek professional help from a mental health therapist. Understanding what is happening during panic attacks. How do we help someone who is having a trauma response or a panic attack that can sometimes be triggered by talking about a traumatic event? We start by understanding what is happening to the brain during a panic attack. Trauma can change key structures of the brain, which is associated with PTSD and PAS, that I will be also discussing throughout my talk. Three of the main changes are in the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the prefrontal cortex. The amygdala is the key part of the limbic system, and its main job during a traumatic event is to sense the danger and set off an alarm through the body. When it is a matter of survival, it overrides the conscious part of the brain, the neocortex, and causes the body to go into fight, flight, or freeze responses. This causes a rush of adrenaline and blood that goes into the muscles, and all systems that are not crucial for survival are switched off. The hippocampus's job is normally to file memories so that you can retrieve them later. But in times of danger, the hippocampus stops filing memories and pumps cortisol through the body, which stops us from experiencing pain so that the body can focus on survival. This is why trauma survivors often have a level of amnesia after a traumatic event. Repeated trauma that most experiencers struggle with causes complex PTSD, or something that has also been termed the post-abduction syndrome. This causes our memories to get stuck in the limbic system. It's as if different aspects of the traumatic events fracture in the brain, and each part of the trauma can trigger the amygdala because it reminds it of the originating trauma. I often will tell my clients the story of the cinnamon candle, and I'm going to just quickly kind of tell that to you today. So let's pretend that there is a young woman who goes to a party, and at the party, she's sexually assaulted. At the time of the assault, there is a cinnamon candle burning in the room. So her brain fractures at that moment. It's too much to handle, and she goes into survival mode. She gets through the assault, and let's say that she later goes into talk therapy and finds it very helpful and cathartic to talk about it and to kind of process through it on that level. And let's say she's feeling much better after that, and then let's take that same woman 20 years later, and she walks into a holiday party. And on the mantle, there is a cinnamon candle burning. So when she walks in the door, again, due to this kind of level of amnesia that occurs in the trauma, she has no idea the cinnamon candle was in any way picked up by the amygdala as a danger sign. So what happens to her brain in that moment? She walks in, she may be feeling great, not even aware that she's stressed in any way, when all of a sudden her heart starts racing. She starts feeling it pounding in her chest. She may have shortness or tightness in her chest and shortness of breath. She feels an overwhelming anxiety just descend on her. People often, when they're having a panic attack, think they're having a heart attack and end up in the emergency room. That has actually happened to me. I was completely stress-free and boom, thought I was having a heart attack. And no, my heart's just fine. It was simply a panic attack. So what happened in that case was the amygdala's job is to constantly scan the environment for danger. And when you have a trauma that's been unprocessed, that gets stuck in the limbic system, it again fractures. So different aspects of the trauma can be very triggering. So experiencers are sometimes stuck with a bad feeling, which triggers a panic attack, and worry that they're about to have another experience, when in reality, they may have just been triggered. When the memory fragments in the brain, it creates many different triggers, like the smell of the cinnamon candle from the story I talked about. They may have been triggered by anything that reminds the amygdala of the originating trauma, like talking about certain aspects of the experience, being in the dark, sounds at night in the house, a certain season, a date, or a place, bright lights, anything that is similar to the originating trauma. It's the same reason a war vet may suffer panic attacks on the 4th of July, even though they know they're only hearing fireworks. And I think it's important that we can help experiencers to understand what's happening so that they can kind of reground, bring that prefrontal cortex back online in that reasoning way to then calm the amygdala down. Grounding and de-escalation of trauma response. Don't push for more information than they are offering. It is important to follow their lead, asking simple, open-ended questions and allowing them to talk about it and moving on when they're done. Keep in mind that you may be the first person they have shared their story with. So move slowly and check in often if you sense that they are becoming stressed. It may take several conversations before they're ready to talk about certain aspects of their experiences. I once worked with an experiencer who took about 6 months in our weekly therapy sessions before she was able to talk about parts of her experience that troubled her the most. So slow down yourself. Take a deep breath if needed and invite them to do so. One of the best breathing techniques is to take deep breaths in through the nose and then exhale as slowly as you can through the mouth. This really helps to calm the body down. Let them know that they can control how much they say in your conversation and that you are not an investigator and that you're only here to listen and support. You can say something like, I can see that this is a tough memory for you to talk about, and I'm wondering if you would like to take a couple breaths to make it easier to deal with the emotions that are coming up right now. And we can stop exploring this anytime that you want. This gives the experiencer more of a feeling of being in control, which helps them to feel safer. If they're not able to talk about it, then ask them if it would be easier to write about it or draw a picture of it. Okay, de-escalation of panic and dissociation. If you notice that they're becoming kind of spacey or tearful, unable to speak, or quiet, they may be having a trauma response. It is important to stop and recognize this and ask how they're doing and what they're feeling. If they're dissociated, they may say something like they don't know, or they feel nothing. Or if they're having a panic attack, they may say that they feel their heart beating or tightness in their chest. In this case, grounding techniques can be very helpful. Start by asking them to take several slow, deep breaths. Invite them to move their body by, I will often have people rub the tops of their arms back and forth with their hands, or their hands across the tops of their thighs back and forth, or wiggling their toes. Movement helps people to come back into the body. Ask them to name 5 colors or textures in the room. This brings them back to the current moment and their space. Have them hold a cold compress on their neck or hold their hands under running water for a couple of minutes. Again, regrounding them back into the body. I also use a lot of psychoeducation to help them to understand what is happening in their body and how the amygdala sometimes overreacts to triggers like talking about their experience. Have them possibly sniff a comforting scent like a spice they may have in the kitchen or a candle. Suggest that they chew a piece of gum or suck on a piece of candy to ground them back into the body. Ask them if they would like to change the subject for a moment to allow them to recenter. Those are just some techniques that I will often use in my sessions with people. Dissociating or blocking the memories out can be a valuable defense mechanism at certain times in an experiencer's life. Don't judge yourself harshly if you're not in a place in your life where you feel supported enough to delve into your experiences further. It's important we don't push people to remember until they are ready. Dissociation allows people to continue to function in their lives when they need to go to work or to school. How do I know when it's time to reach out for help? In this next section, I will go over many ways that experiencers suffer, and I will talk about the different forms of interventions that may be most helpful. Post-abduction syndrome, or PAS, also sometimes called post-abduction stress syndrome, PASS, is a collection of symptoms commonly reported by persons who claim that they have been the victim of an alien abduction. This new label was based on the pioneering work of researcher Bud Hopkins, and this list was developed by Rose Hargrove, RN, in February of 2000. The syndrome is not officially recognized by the American Psychiatric Association, the American Psychological Association, or by equivalent professional associations in other natures. PAS shares many symptoms with the officially recognized post-traumatic stress disorder, but it's not the same. PAS only refers to symptoms derived from the alien abduction phenomena. So I'm going to go over some of the symptoms. PMS is comprised of the following characteristics: persistent re-experiencing of a traumatic event characterized by flashbacks. I once had a terrible flashback at the dentist's office, and when that bright light came on. So lots of things can cause an experiencer, again, triggering the amygdala in the brain to cause that trauma response. They may have persistent avoidance of stimuli associated with the trauma. Denial of the event. I'll often work with somebody who will have a major experience and will really be, talking about it and animated. And, oh my God, this is real, it really happened. And a week or two later, yeah, I don't know if that really happened. And that's not unusual. Labeling the event as something else. I blacked out, I was lost, etc. Phobic avoidance of areas or situations where contact occurred. I worked with an experiencer who was unable to sleep in their bedroom after an encounter until they redecorated the room and moved the furniture. This is a great example of a trauma response. Refraining from sleep at the time that the contact occurred, sleeping in the daytime, which is extremely common. Emotional reaction to literature, pictures or videos about alien entities, turning over books with a picture of an alien or a UFO, which may include avoiding them. Numbing of emotions and responsiveness characterized by inability to feel intimacy, pleasure, or to express emotions, like an emotional anesthesia. Diminished interest in or less participation in previously enjoyed activities. This can be a sign that someone is suffering with depression and needs professional help. They may have a sense of foreshortened future, no expectation of a normal life events or normal lifespan. They may fear abduction with no return or lengthy abduction. Anxiety symptoms that persist in hypervigilance, exaggerated startle responses, irritability, and panic attacks. It's not uncommon for an experiencer to have a flashback when as I talked about earlier, at the dentist's office, or experiencers often have a hard time going to the doctor, period. When you realize that your experiences are impacting your life in a negative way, or that you are struggling with the symptoms of PAS, it is definitely time to reach out for help. This is a list of different types of support that can be most helpful to experiencers. Joining a support group, either online or in person, can help people to feel less isolated, and it helps to normalize what is happening to them, which assists with the integration process. Reading books on the subject can help to ground the experiences and help them to put the fragmented pieces together. Journaling about your experiences can be an invaluable way to gain confirmation of the reality of your experiences when you read years later that someone else had the same experience that you had. Talking to a friend or a family member, reaching out to a paranormal informed mental health counselor, therapist, and reprocessing the trauma through eye movement, desensitization and reprocessing, or EMDR, or hypnotherapy, along with talk therapy, can give people tools they need to integrate the experiences and to recover from the trauma and ontological shock. And I'll be talking more about these interventions come in the next slides. Attending an experience or support group is often the first time someone has felt safe and truly accepted when recounting their suspicions or experiences. It's a place where people can realize that they aren't alone or crazy. Listening to others can teach so much and helps them to start to accept and normalize their experiences. It is also a place where experiencers can gain a sense of community which really helps with the integration process. Journaling helps you to start to see patterns in your experiences, and it can be very cathartic to be able to get your feelings out. Journaling can also serve as a record to help you to accept the reality of your encounters when you hear of someone else having the same odd experience that you had years earlier, which furthers the integration process. I suggest that people list the dates and times of each experience. Always list the feelings that you had before and after the experience. It gives you context when you list what you were doing before the experience and what your state of mind was after. This also makes it easier to talk to other people about your encounters in a clear, linear narrative later on, which makes it easier for them to understand and follow. Draw pictures of the things that you remember. And last, scaling your level of fear or anxiety from 0 to 10 can be very helpful as you look back over your life, and this helps you to see how far you've come. Talking to others about your experiences. It's important to test the waters before talking about your experiences with someone for the first time. You might start by asking how they feel about the UFO phenomena, or if they have ever seen a UFO, as a way to start the conversation. It's important not to overload people. I watch people for cues about how receptive they are and allow them time to ask questions and drive the conversation. Follow their lead. Try to stick to answering only the questions they are asking, letting them set the pace in the conversation, which keeps them from becoming overloaded. Talking about the things that you know happened and being clear about the things you're not sure of helps others to feel more comfortable with the topic. This reassures them that you are examining your experiences in a thorough and analytical way. It's helpful to discuss the fact that you may also, that you've also taken the time to look for more mundane explanations for your experiences. Do people who've had these experiences all need therapy? And how do I know if it would benefit me? What kind of help do experiencers most often need? Most people having these types of experiences are psychologically healthy and don't find that they require long-term therapy. People often need help with the grieving process as they grapple with the fact that their old worldview no longer fits. And this is what is also called ontological shock. People often experience isolation and depression with the encounters, unable to talk to others about what they are going through, so they suffer in silence. This is a time when therapy and a support group could be very helpful. They often try to deny their experiences, clinging to mundane answers for what has been happening to them, while still suffering in fear. They may struggle with feelings of anger over what is happening, excuse me, and their loss of control in the situation, and help from a therapist to reprocess the trauma through EMDR will help them to move through it more easily. Some people struggle for years with unexplained phobias and need help coping and gaining a deeper understanding of them, which could be accomplished with help from a trained therapist. EMDR is a technique that utilizes rapid eye movement like REM sleep, which causes your brain to process traumatic memories, allowing you to release trauma from the experience. EMDR can lower your responses to triggers in the brain, which allows people to feel calmer and let go of some of the fear. It is also very helpful in stimulating memory retrieval of the traumatic event as well. And it can be performed in person or remotely. EMDR causes a learning state to be set up in the brain, which allows the experiences to be stored more appropriately in the brain. And I want to comment that we have quite a few EMDR therapists. I'm one of them in the EST provider list. Hypnotherapy. In this next section, I will be discussing the use of hypnotherapy to help experiencers to recover more memory and as a healing tool. Hypnotherapy is very deep work and can also be a great tool to reprocess the trauma that is often experienced in these encounters. I drew a lot of inspiration and information from the pioneering work of John Carpenter, MSW, LCSW, for his from his section of his website, Alien Jigsaw, the Therapeutic Ideas for Coping. It's a great resource. How do I know if I should try hypnotherapy to recover more memory of missing time that I've experienced? It might be a good idea to explore fragmented memories if they are causing fear that is impacting your life negatively, like insomnia, fear of the dark, fear of locations, or overwhelming anxiety around memories. Make sure you are ready to explore your experiences further and that you're in a stable place in your life where you could take the day off if you needed to process something that might come up. It's crucial that you have a good support network around you and someone to drive you that day to the session. There's no rush, most importantly. The memories will still be there under the surface years from now when you are ready to explore them. My opinion is, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. Unless you are struggling in any of the ways that I have previously mentioned, I don't think it's necessary to undergo hypnotherapy. Greater anxiety can develop in some cases if you push yourself too fast to recover memory before you are ready, and you don't allow the memory to emerge in a more organic manner. Here's some of the possible positive results from hypnotherapy. Some evidence shows that people often feel relief, more understanding, less confusion, and added awareness of the different ways the phenomena is functioning in their lives. People often feel better when they can put the pieces of odd fragmented memories together in a coherent way. It can often clear up confused or misunderstood memories that have bothered them for years. Many have found that their odd phobias improve when they have more awareness about where their fear originated. Abreactive techniques can be used to relieve pressure and aiding in the healing. These are techniques that allow someone to release the anger that they may feel towards what is happening. How do I cope with the fear I have around these experiences? Another wonderful resource that I suggest is a book by Kathleen Marden and several other researchers, including our Madeline Tobias, called Extraterrestrial Contact: What to Do When You've Been Abducted. It's a fabulous resource and I highly recommend it. Dealing with fear. Reaffirm to yourself that you have always been brought back safe and unharmed for the most part. Realize that many people claim to have been healed in their encounters with the contact phenomena. I suggest the book, The Healing Power of UFOs by Preston Dennett for more information on this. Realize that these beings have invested a lot of time in you and your family, and it would be counterproductive for them to harm you. Practice talking to them to make it easier for you when you are paralyzed by the fear. Tell them what you need and expect from them in the future. Write them a note and put it beside your bed at night to tell them what is acceptable and what you need or what you don't like. Begin a meditation practice to begin to learn to stay in the present and overcome some of the fear. Call a friend to help you to feel less alone, or distract yourself with an uplifting movie. Seek help from a paranormal trauma-informed therapist to reprocess the trauma you have suffered. Again, EMDR can be extremely helpful in this area. And the next section I would like to talk about is one of the most devastating parts of this phenomena, and that is around missing pregnancies. Many female experiencers will realize they are pregnant for a few months, only to suddenly find that they are no longer pregnant. They may even have some kind of odd encounter or memory of strange beings or lights in their home right before they lost the pregnancy. Many of the ideas and information that I've gathered for the next two sections were inspired by Mary Rodwell's book, Awakening: How Extraterrestrial Contact Can Transform Your Life. Again, a book I highly recommend every experiencer read. A woman may discover that she is pregnant, sometimes under strange circumstances, even during a time that she is celibate. The pregnancy may be confirmed by her doctor and an ultrasound, only to vanish weeks or months later. Often there is no fetal tissue that passes, and it appears that the pregnancy just disappeared, leaving the experiencer heartbroken and bewildered. I once had a case with a woman who was a lesbian, who had never had sex with a man, who suddenly found herself pregnant, and a couple of months later, it just disappeared. So this is definitely happening to a lot of people. Some women will notice that they're having more contact experiences during their times of ovulation. They may have some type of contact around the time of the loss of the fetus. They may have dreams or memories of fetuses floating in tanks and of being asked to hold odd-looking babies. Many women feel strong emotional bonds to these children. Some have actual memories of the fetus being taken and placed into a tank of liquid or cut out of a gestational sac. The fetus will often appear not to be fully human. Experiencers can have very complicated feelings around this. Some will grieve the loss of the child, while others may deal with the guilt of having rejected the baby due to the fact that it did not look human and they didn't believe it was theirs. Regardless, this is very traumatic and destabilizing for everyone. And I really want to stress and emphasize, I've heard from so many people after the fact, kind of realizing in their lives as they integrate the phenomena further, realizing, and feeling guilty for having rejected the fetus and or not believing it was theirs. So it really runs the full gamut. And I really try to help those women understand, how unfair the situation was. They may have made a very different decision had they had more information. How do you cope with the feelings of loss and grief that often arise from having lost a pregnancy in this way? You start by honoring the grieving process. Give the baby that you lost a name. Giving the baby a name can help you to come to terms with the loss. Write a letter or simply talk to the baby about your feelings and the grief that you're feeling, not having him or her in your life. It is important that you talk about your feelings to someone you trust who can honor your experience and your grief. If you are religious or spiritual, you may want to pray for the baby and ask for guidance and for them to watch over the baby for you. Plant a special flower or a tree in your garden for them. It will allow you to feel close to them and show that their memory is still alive. And again, if you rejected the baby, you need to forgive yourself for being caught off guard and in shock at seeing a baby that was clearly not fully human. Realize that you may have had a very different reaction if you had been prepared and had been given permission or had given permission for this when the baby was presented to you. And this is one of the last sections I'm talking about. In this section, I'm going to give you some ideas on how to talk to children who are having these experiences and how to help them to deal with the fear they may be feeling around it. Talking to children. Listen to them and honor their feelings about their experience. Use the child's words when talking with them about their experience. If they say it really happened, then acknowledge it as real. If they are fearful, remind them that they have always been returned safely, and so have you. Only answer the questions that they've asked as simplistically as possible and follow their lead, allowing them to change the subject when they have all of the information that they needed. If your child doesn't seem upset by their experiences, then hold back from giving them information that could worry or confuse them. I'm finding a lot of times that children these days are not having nearly as traumatic experiences. Yes, it's traumatic to see these beings, but a lot more teaching seems to be happening with kids, and a lot of them don't seem to be as fearful. If they are experiencing fear about their encounters, then help them to produce coping strategies to lessen the anxiety. Be mindful of how you talk to your children about their experiences if you are fearful and struggling with your own unprocessed trauma. Have them draw pictures if they're having trouble or struggling to talk about it. And allow them to dissociate the memories if they are coping well without them for a while. Dissociation, again, can be very valuable. And I will often hear about kids when they're very young talking about, the beings that they've been seeing and having experiences. And then years later saying, oh, no, none of that happened, and I just say, just allow that, allow their brain to process this in as organic a way as possible. Next, here are some coping strategies for children who are struggling with fear around these encounters. Night lights, ambient noise machines, and open or closed doors can be very helpful for children struggling to sleep at night. Opaque window coverings and closed windows can also be helpful at night. I also want to add to this to close closet doors to help them to feel more comfortable. Ask your child whether they are more comfortable with the bedroom door open or closed. Position the child's bed away from the windows and doors or in a position that they choose to be most comfortable. Repeating certain words or phrases or praying to a religious or spiritual figure to watch over them can be comforting. Have them write a letter to the beings expressing what they like and don't like, and how they would like to be treated can be helpful. Allowing your child to sleep with you on the nights that they are really struggling will help them to feel secure and less alone. It is important to realize that your child may be having teaching experiences of a very spiritual nature, and that they may have access to concepts and information that is way beyond their years. They may not hold the same fear or trauma that you may have. And it is important that you honor their process and the knowledge that they have been given or may have been given. This is a wonderful quote by Mary Rodwell. By honoring their awareness and understanding, you are helping them to cope in a healthy and positive way, allowing them to achieve their potential. Children have access to inner resources naturally. The more that you encourage them to have confidence in their inner wisdom and their reality, the better chance they have to cope with their contact in a balanced and healthy way. That again is from Mary Rodwell's book, Awakening: How Extraterrestrial Contact Can Transform Your Life. I always end my talk on the contact phenomena with a butterfly, because I feel it is the best symbol to portray the transformation that I believe humanity is going through as we wake up to the greater reality we are living in. Thank you so much for joining me today.